They say nothing good happens under a dark moon, that when the moon fades into shadow and darkness spreads its wings, secrets come alive, cryptids roam the land, spirits whisper in the dark, and devilish beings wait patiently for you just around the corner. But this isn't a warning. It's an invitation. You're about to leave the world you know. You're going to step into a place where the strange is common, the shadows speak, and secrets insist on being heard, and nothing stays buried for long. Welcome. Let's see what we encounter under a dark moon. The moon was already a pale sickle in the sky by the time I clocked off work. It was 9 p.m. and I was the only one left in the office, the pale glow of my computer screen thickening the shadows around the edges of the room. I sat back with a stretch, finally done with my report, and stifled a yawn behind my hand. I hadn't meant to stay so late, but with the deadline creeping up on me much quicker than I realized, I figured I'd rather just put the hours in now and get it done. Rubbing my tired eyes, I logged off my computer and pushed my chair away from the desk, the plastic legs creaking as the light from the screen flickered off, plunging the whole office into darkness. Almost immediately, the shadows assaulted me from either side, crawling across the carpet and creeping along the desk. I cleared my throat, trying to stir the quiet, and quickly fished my phone out of my bag, switching on the flashlight function. The small beam of light cut through the darkness, but from the edges of the room, the other desks and cubicles loomed as unfathomable shapes. I hated being the only one left here. There was something eerie about that office at night, the silence that replaced the usual hum of activity during the day, the slight, discordant echo of creaks and groans as floors settled in the absence of movement. I tried not to think about it too much as I gathered up my jacket and bag, making sure I had my car keys on me. I then began making my way through the cubicles towards the lobby. The office was on the 5th floor of a 13-story high-rise, and it felt like I was the only one left in the entire building. Flicking one last glance over my shoulder at the empty office, I pushed through the doors into the lobby. The lights here were motion-censored and flickered on as soon as I stepped beneath them. I turned my phone flashlight off, putting it away as I walked up to the elevators and hit the call button. I was far too tired to take 5 flights of stairs, especially in the dark. I'd get my daily exercise in the morning instead. While I waited for the elevator to come up from the 1st floor, I tapped my feet, hoping the motion sensor lights wouldn't flicker off while I was still there. There was nothing worse than finding yourself alone in sudden darkness. With a soft ding, the elevator arrived. The door slid open with a scrape of metal. I stepped inside, blinking tiredly. The air inside the lift felt heavy and stale, like it hadn't been used in a while, though it couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 hours since someone had last used it. As I was reaching towards the keypad to hit the ground floor, my vision blurred from a piece of floating dust in the air. I wiped it away while hitting the button, and only realized as the door slid shut that I had accidentally hit a different number, for the 6th floor. Muttering a curse under my breath, I tried to hit the ground floor button again to correct it, but the 6th floor remained lit up, which meant the elevator would take me up first instead of down. I kept hitting the ground floor button, but it remained unlit. Instead, I pressed some other buttons, hoping it might cancel the original input. But instead, I ended up with 4 random numbers glowing softly on the keypad. 6421. I had pressed more than those 4 numbers, hadn't I? Before my tired brain could understand, the lights inside the elevator flickered off. Just for a second, but it was long enough to send an icy shiver along the back of my neck, the hairs on my arms standing on end. By the time the lights came back on, only 1 floor was now lit up. 13. The top floor of the building. What the hell? I'd never even pressed that number. The elevator shuddered and began moving. I stumbled a little, catching myself against the cold wall. I was going up to the 13th floor. I frantically searched the buttons, but there was no option to cancel or even an emergency stop button. Weren't all elevators required to have one? Now wide awake, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. Why had the elevator ignored all of my numbers? Why was it taking me to the 13th floor? Had someone up there summoned the elevator, canceling all of my inputs? Who else was in the building at this time of night? Unless it was one of the janitors. Sometimes they had override keys for things like this. Easing my nerves with that explanation, I decided to simply wait. Once I got to the 13th floor, I just had to patiently press the ground floor button again, and it would take me right back down, and I would be out of here in no more than 10 minutes. My eyes flickered to the display screen above the doors, watching as the numbers climbed. 8, 9, 10, 11. As we crept closer to 13, the temperature inside the elevator suddenly dropped. Goosebumps spread along my neck and arms, and a chill spread along the small of my back. An icy fear gripped my chest. What was happening? Why had it gotten so cold all of a sudden? I could almost see my breath dancing around me like a pale ghost. Were the radiators broken up here? But even if they were, it was only September, and it definitely shouldn't be this cold. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I watched the number on the display finally read 13. Then the elevator grinded to a sudden screeching halt, making me stumble for a second time. Blood thundered in my ears, my heart dancing erratically in my chest as I waited for the doors to slide open, hoping it was just a janitor waiting on the other side, as desperate to get home as I was. The elevator creaked again. Somewhere, far below, I heard gears clanking. My heart wrenched with panic. Was the elevator broken? What if it suddenly dropped, like it did in horror movies, crushing me upon impact? But a breathless second later, the doors finally rattled open. What greeted me on the other side was a long, dark hallway, empty. I swallowed down the lump in my throat. If there was nobody there, who had called the elevator up to the 13th floor? I shook away the question. It didn't matter. I reached forward and hit the ground floor button once, twice, 3 times, but it still did not light up. Nothing happened. I tried it again, my desperation growing. Why wasn't it working? Was the elevator really broken? I kept hitting the ground floor button, but everything had gone quiet now. I couldn't hear the elevator humming, the gears creaking. The screen at the top of the doors was blank. It was like the whole thing had shut down, just stopped working. Then all the lights went out, silently, without warning. Stranded in sudden darkness, fear wrapped around my chest, as cold as the air brushing against my skin. What was happening? I fumbled for my phone again, switching on the flashlight. Had the power gone out? Was that why the elevator had powered down? Was that why the lights had gone off? I swiped a hand over my brow, smearing the cold sweat that dappled my skin. If the elevator wasn't working, then I had no choice but to take the stairs, all 13 flights of them. Directing the beam of light down the hallway, I bit back a gasp. For a moment I thought I'd seen something, a shadowy figure peeking around the wall at the end of the corridor. Just a blot of darkness and long tendrils of what looked like hair. But when I looked again, there was nothing. Just the shadows playing tricks on my eyes, feeding my paranoia. I hesitated before taking the first step, reluctant to leave the threshold of the elevator. But I had to get out of here. It was late. I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home. As soon as both feet were planted on the plush carpet outside the elevator, I felt a hiss of air brush against my neck and heard a soft clang. I spun around, eyes wide. The elevator doors had sprung shut behind me. Heart pounding, I hit the button to open the doors again, but nothing happened. If there was no power, why had the doors closed? More beads of sweat dripped down my neck, ice cold. Something didn't feel right. It was almost like I'd been taken up here for a reason, and now my way back had been closed off. Why? I had to find the stairs, quickly. Turning forward, my hand began trembling, the flashlight jittering all over the place as it illuminated the empty, quiet corridor. I had never been up to the 13th floor before, but it had a similar layout to the rest of the levels, which meant there should have been a door on the right to the elevator, leading to the stairwell. But there wasn't. There were no doors at all along the corridor. No emergency exit signs. Nothing. Maybe it was around the corner instead, I thought. Fighting back my trepidation, I began walking down the hallway, the carpet muffling my steps. The air was cold and stale, settling uncomfortably along the collar of my blouse. A draft stirred my long hair, tickling the edges of my chin. As I treaded further along the corridor, I became aware of a sound. Soft, ragged gasps, like something was breathing in the darkness just ahead of me, echoing in the silence between my own. Was there someone else up here? My mind cast back to that strange, shadowy figure peeking around the corner. What if that hadn't been my imagination after all? What if I wasn't really alone? I frantically shone my phone around me, searching for the source of the noise. But there was nobody else here. Around the corner, though. Was that where it was coming from? Was someone or something waiting for me there? I paused and pinched myself hard on the wrist, telling myself to stop being so silly. This wasn't some kind of nightmare. There wasn't a monster waiting in the darkness. I was too old to be letting my imagination get carried away like this. There was nothing there. Nothing. I was alone here, and I needed to get home. I needed to find the stairs. Clenching my jaw, I steadied the light in my hand and carried on walking. When I reached the corner, I turned it without hesitating. Another long, dark corridor stretched ahead of me, empty. A few doors lined the wall on the left, but I still couldn't see any stairs or emergency exit signs. Did the 13th floor not have any stairs? What about in the case of a fire or a power cut? Now that I thought about it, I didn't even know what kind of business occupied this floor. I'd never heard anyone talk about it. Nor could I recall what the directory on the ground floor lobby read. Was there even a 13th floor on it? The only evidence of a 13th floor existing was the number in the elevator, a number I'd never seen anyone press. I shook my head. I was probably overthinking things. Maybe it was simply used for storage, or maybe it was a base for security. The only thing I could do was keep exploring until I eventually found a way out. Or I could call for help, I thought. If there really was a power outage, someone might have to come and fix it. Did I even have the number for the building's maintenance staff on my phone? I glanced down to check and noticed the no service sign in the corner of the screen. Even if I did have the number, it was no use because I couldn't call it. I couldn't call anyone. I was stuck here on my own until I found a way out. I was halfway towards the first door when I felt it. A shift in the atmosphere, like it was molding around another presence. The air grew cold, cutting through my skin like ice. That low, ragged breathing grew more noticeable, enveloping the sound of my own. There was something else here, and it was coming closer. My heart quickened in my chest, blood pulsing in my ears. The flashlight wavered, darting across the corridor ahead of me. Then something began to appear from around the corner. At first, long dark hair hanging forward, then a shape bent and strange, like someone hunching forward, moving with odd, staggering movements. Not a person. Something else. Something far more terrifying. I ran before it had fully turned the corner. Not backwards, there was nowhere to go behind me, but forwards, towards the first door. Praying desperately that it wasn't locked, I yanked on the handle. It opened silently, and I threw myself inside, closing it in my wake, my hands trembling as I searched for a lock. But there wasn't one. Flashlight flooded the ground at my feet, and I quickly cut it off before the thing saw it peeking out from beneath the door frame. Had it seen me run in here? I hadn't seen its face, hadn't seen where it was looking. What the hell even was it? It looked human, but at the same time, no human walked like that, all hunched and crooked, like limbs were broken. Catching my breath, I finally turned to look behind me. I muffled the light with my sleeve, allowing only enough for me to see by. An office room, just like the one I worked in. Only this one seemed old, abandoned. Half the desks were missing computers, and everything was scratched and dirty, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. And there was a foul smell in the air, too, something damp and rotten. Was this some kind of storage room for old equipment? How long had it been up here? Why hadn't they just thrown it all out? Outside the door, the floor creaked. A long, heavy rasp, like an exhale. It made the hairs on my neck stand up. Had it seen me come in here after all? Stone-cold dread settled into my stomach as I switched off the phone flashlight and ran toward one of the cubicles, crawling beneath the desk. I pulled my knees right up to my chest and tried to keep my breathing as quiet as possible. Dreading the moment, I heard the door open. After a few seconds had passed, I heard nothing, just that faint, ragged breathing, and a soft creaking noise like old joints, broken bones grinding together. Finally, all the sounds faded, leaving me in silence. Why hadn't it come inside? Did it not know I was here? I released the pent-up breath that I'd been holding, my heart thundering in my chest. What was going on? What was that thing? Why was it here? I checked my phone again. Still no signal. My battery was running low too, creeping close to barely 20%. If I didn't get out of here soon, I would be trapped in the darkness with that thing. and it was still hours until dawn broke. I crawled back out from beneath the desk, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Too afraid to switch my light on again, I moved blindly through the darkness, reaching out with my fingers until my vision adjusted. I paused at the door and listened. Silence on the other side. Had that thing really gone? Or was it still out there, waiting in the dark? I tentatively reached for the handle and twisted it slowly, opening the door just wide enough to peer through. Shadows pooled on the other side, undisturbed. There was nothing there. Was it safe to leave? I had no idea. But I couldn't stay here. I had to find a way out. Pulling the door open wider, I poked my head out, scanning my gaze left to right. Whatever had been out here was gone now. I slipped out with one last glance behind me and started moving down the corridor in the same direction that the thing had come from. All I could do was hope the emergency exit was somewhere ahead of me. Otherwise, I really was stuck here. There was a second door on the left. No exit sign hung above it, but I had to check, just in case. Pushing it open quietly, I peered inside. Another empty, abandoned office. Almost a mirror image of my own, except this one had been left to rot and gather dust for years. I left the door partially ajar and continued walking. For now, all seemed quiet, and I risked putting my phone light back on just to chase away the shadows nipping at my heels. When I turned the corner, I found another empty hallway, identical to the one behind me. The dread in my stomach stirred. How long did this go on for? With the thought of that thing lingering somewhere behind me, I had no choice but to keep going. More doors lined the walls, this time on the right. I checked both as I passed them, but each opened out into another old, stale office room. The same cracked computers, broken, dirty desks, and cobwebs glinting in the flashlight. I was almost to the end of the third hallway when I heard it again. Those low, ragged gasps, stiff, creaking bones. My heart stilled, fear cocooning my mind. I turned around, shining my light. Long, crooked fingers reached around the wall, dragging itself forward. Dark hair hanging loosely over its face like a veil. I watched in horror as it appeared fully at the other end of the hallway, a strange amalgamation of broken limbs and gray, drooping skin. I could have pinched myself again, willing this to be nothing but a nightmare. But the fear in my chest was real, more real than anything else. Its rasping breaths grew heavier, more frantic, and I knew it had seen me this time. I turned and ran, my legs feeling stiff and sluggish as I forced myself to keep going, the light from my phone bouncing all around me as I swung my arms. There had to be an exit eventually. The floor wasn't big enough for endless corridors. If I kept running, then surely. But at the end of each hallway, there was another, just like the last. Each one seemed to get longer, narrower. Or perhaps I was simply getting slower, darkness tunneling my vision. At some point, my phone died, plunging me back into the darkness. But I kept going. I lost track of how many corridors I'd run down. 11? 12? Then, as I turned onto what might have been the 13th corridor, something changed. A small green light flickered ahead of me. Large black letters backlit by the glow. Emergency exit. I'd made it. I was finally getting out of here. I could still hear the thing chasing behind me, the thud of its feet hitting the ground, the creaking joints, the rasping hiss of its breath. I had no time to lose. With a desperate burst of speed, I ran towards the exit, shoving through the double doors with my whole body. I found myself at the top of a dark stairwell, my chest heaving from running. I wasn't sure if that thing would follow me out here, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. So I kept going, fighting back my fatigue, urging my legs to keep running. I could rest once I got out of here. All the lights remained off as I raced down the stairs, making it hard to see exactly where I was going. I should have slowed down. I should have been more careful, because before I knew it, I missed one of the steps. My foot hit empty air, and I lurched forward, my stomach wrenching sharply as I threw out my hands to cushion my fall. I hit the stairs hard, cracking my ribs and twisting both of my ankles. But without anything to grasp onto, I just kept falling. I rolled from one stair to the next, unable to break my descent as I went down head over feet, my body twisting and wrenching sharply in all directions, bones cracking, agonizing jolts of pain sending my head spinning. When I finally stopped moving, when there were no more stairs to tumble down, I could no longer move my body. Every part of me felt broken, crooked, completely twisted into something else entirely. My breaths came out in low, ragged gasps, and my dark hair covered my face, unable to even see the darkness around me, just like the very thing I had been running from.